You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and are you guys ready for this wild ride out of Kentucky? We've got murder charges, a lawsuit, hidden 911 calls, small town politics, and a young woman dead with zero motive for the death. Amber Spradlin is a 38-year-old single female whose life has been a non-typical tale. She was raised by her grandparents after her mother died when she was just 3 years old. And her father, well, he really just couldn't do the single dad thing. Then her sister died in a car wreck when Amber was 10 years old. Now, Debbie Hall, that's Amber's second cousin, she told the Broken System podcast all about Amber. She lived just 2 doors down from Amber's grandparents, and she was actively involved in Amber's life. Debbie said Amber was somewhat unaware of social expectations. She didn't quite get social cues. She struggled in high school where people would sometimes make fun of her, but Amber didn't even realize that's what they were doing because she couldn't really read the situation. There was good in her life, though. She traveled the world with her grandparents who loved her dearly. When her grandparents began to age, Amber stepped in and became a caretaker for them. She did the grocery shopping, the errands, the day-to-day tasks. But average employment was difficult for Amber. It wasn't until her grandparents died that Amber understood maybe it was a good time to work outside of the home. She began a hostess gig at the Brick House restaurant, which was owned by Dr. Michael McKinney. All right, he's a dentist in Prestonsburg, Kentucky. And remember, I said this is a small town. The dentist's office is next door to the Brick House restaurant, and then just a little more than a block from the county courthouse. They're all kind of situated in that, that quintessential small town look. That's what's going on here. Now, Amber typically works short 4-hour shifts, and it was just the right amount of time for Amber to transition into a work atmosphere and begin making friends after spending so many years with her grandparents. Now, I know that seems weird for a 38-year-old, almost 39-year-old, but this was the growth in Amber's life. Well, Debbie, on the Broken System podcast, reflected that Amber was so proud of her new work gig, which she had been doing for about 2 months. On the evening of June 17th, 2023, Amber left her job at the Brick House restaurant with a group of people, and she visited the Seasons Inn. That's about 15 minutes away in Martin, Kentucky. Okay, and it's important to know that the local motel and restaurant, the Seasons Inn, well, it's also connected to Dr. Michael McKinney. So this is her boss. He's a dentist. He owns the Brick House restaurant, and he owns the Seasons Inn restaurant, or at least he's a partial owner. He has connection to that one as well. Okay, while there, she had drinks, and the group of people included Michael McKinney III. So let's take a moment to define this father-son duo. Dr. Michael McKinney is 56 years old, and his son is 24 years old. So from here on out, for clarity, I'll refer to Dr. McKinney, the dentist and father, as Michael, and I'll refer to his son as MK, because spoiler alert here, they're both intertwined in this mess, and we need to keep them separated. Well, on that night, following drinks at the Seasons Inn, the group moved on to Michael's house in the early hours of June 18th. There, the party continued, and the drinks continued, until MK called 911 at 5 a.m. that morning. He told dispatch that there was someone in his basement bleeding profusely. He also, according to NBC News, said that he needed a drunk person removed from his home. Okay, this sounds pretty serious, right? There's bleeding and a dangerous person. Well, at some point in that 911 call, Michael took the phone from his son, and he told the dispatch operator that all was well. He could handle the issue in the basement, and that they didn't need any help. It was just a small cut. And so, no emergency responders were sent to Michael's home. Not police, not EMTs. The call was logged and then disregarded. Until a second 911 call was placed from Michael's home at 10 a.m. that morning. This time the call was Michael, and he told dispatch that there was a dead woman on his couch And then he hung up the phone. That was so doctorly of him, right? Well, when EMTs arrived, they found Amber stabbed about the head, neck, and face nearly a dozen times. And as Michael surmised, she was dead. But this call history gets even weirder. Somewhere between the two calls, according to NBC News, Michael preemptively called Police Chief Randy Woods. Now, we don't know much about this call, but according to a lawsuit, which we'll get to in a minute, that lawsuit's part of the story, but according to a lawsuit, the call was allegedly an effort by Michael to get some help before he actually reported Amber's death to authorities. So we've got the 3 calls, 2 of them very suspicious. Amber murdered in Michael's home, and are you ready for this? There's no arrests for more than a year after Amber's death. And as you can expect, a very, very frustrated community there in Kentucky. The small town of Martin has only about 4,000 people, and the entire county is about 36,000 people. Everyone knows about this murder, and everyone has an opinion. One of those opinions is about the perceived response by the 911 system, and there's a backstory there. More than a year before Amber's death, the city of Martin approved a resolution to outsource the 911 dispatch services to neighboring Prestonsburg. Now, the city was currently using the Kentucky State Response Center. The move to Prestonsburg was spurred by city officials learning that the charges from emergency response by Kentucky State Police would double in 2023, and they couldn't absorb that price increase. Well, almost instantly, the small town felt the change. Residents said they couldn't get any emergency response at all, or if they did, it was drastically delayed. The Broken System podcast references David and James Hoover. Now, these are brothers who had a squabble one day. One brother called dispatch and said, "Hey, you better get someone down here because I'm fixing to kill my brother." Well, it took 3 hours for an emergency response, and one brother had killed the other brother by the time they showed up. That's just one example of the many that community members seem to be frustrated over. All right, let's re-examine. We have the community outraged over the death. On both sides, by the way. There are people who adore the McKinneys, but there are community members who are devastated that the investigation is taking so long. And we also have the outrage because we had no response to the first 911 call. I mean, even at a minimum of clearing the scene, go and do a welfare check. And then we have Michael at the scene and his son MK fleeing the scene before the first responders arrived. Yet we had no arrests. But there's still more I haven't told you, because the arrests are coming and the dominoes were falling before that. See, 5 days after Amber's death, the police chief, Randy Woods, he's the one who took the phone call, remember? Well, he suddenly resigned. In a statement, he attributed his resignation to a shooting that left 3 officers dead, 2 of them from his office. So that's suspicious all on its own. And then, during this time frame, we have a Facebook group that has started with tens of thousands of followers. They're demanding justice for Amber. Billboards were placed around the small town with Amber's face, and then the lone phrase, "Justice for Amber." Well then, finally, on July 30th of this year, more than a year after Amber's death, a grand jury in Floyd County indicted Dr. Michael McKinney and his son MK on multiple charges. MK was charged with murder and 7 charges of complicity to tampering with physical evidence. Michael, the dad, was charged with 7 charges of complicity to tampering with physical evidence. And then a new player entered the scene, Josh Mullins, who goes by the name Square. He was charged with 7 charges of complicity to tampering with physical evidence as well. Investigators believe all 3 men were present in the home and during the murder. The Broken System podcast states that Josh, or Square, is basically indigent, but his court documents list his home address as the same address listed for Dr. McKinney and MK. Now, the indictment says the 3 men were complicit in the tampering of evidence by discarding the handle of the broken knife used by MK to murder Amber, and also discarded MK's clothes from that night and early morning of partying. Investigators also contend that the three men cleaned blood from the kitchen and laundry room sinks in Michael's home. They also say that the three destroyed a digital video recorder, which contained footage from surveillance video cameras, and that they also destroyed a hard drive from the only PC in the residence. They believe that PC also contained info from the video surveillance system. Now, Debbie, Amber's cousin, spoke for the family shortly after the arrest, saying the following: "Finally, our community can feel relieved knowing that those responsible will soon face a jury of their neighbors and the penalties that the jury will impose for their crimes." She then went on saying, "Although there are others who have yet to be charged criminally as a result of their involvement in the attempted cover-up, and those who will only suffer civil penalties for what they have done, each of them need to know that they will have to live with what they did to put into motion the events which resulted in Amber's death." Now, she also addressed the work done by the Commonwealth's attorney, Brent Turner, and the Kentucky State Police, saying that the reason it took so long for arrests to be made were because the three men destroyed evidence and misled investigators, and also that other people in power impeded the process. Brent Turner addressed the community's concerns as well, saying the following: "I want to dispel the suggestion that the investigation was in any way affected by politics or the status of any suspects involved. Nothing could be further from the truth. Detective Justin Wireman and every officer from the Kentucky State Police who have been involved with this investigation have worked tirelessly to seek justice for what occurred here. They have spent countless hours getting this case to where it is today and is to be commended." Now, Turner did suggest that the crime lab in Kentucky is terribly backed up and that waiting for those results so that they could summon a grand jury took months. All right, it's also important to note that it wasn't all compliments by Debbie. She had harsh words for the 911 debacle. She said the following: "Each of you involved in removing the safety of the 911 dispatch center from the Kentucky State Police to Prestonsburg, each of you should know that while you might not have been at Arkansas Creek on that fateful night, you have Amber's blood on your hands." She then continued with this: "There are others responsible for the tragic death of Amber, including the magistrates who voted for the interlocal agreement moving the 911 dispatch center, those who drafted the agreement, those who chose not to send someone to Arkansas Creek when the first call came into the Prestonsburg dispatch center. And again, each of you have Amber's blood on your hands as if you were at the Arkansas Creek home while Amber fought for her life." Wow, you guys, she did not hold back. And she didn't hold back a few weeks ago when a lawsuit was filed by her attorneys against the McKinneys. Remember, I told you I would get to this, and it's such a key portion to this case. Because if it wasn't for that lawsuit, we wouldn't have the information from the 911 calls or an explanation about the cover-up, since all of it has basically been on lockdown, and it continues to be on lockdown. The suit was filed 1 month before the arrests, and it names more than a dozen defendants that include a judge who oversaw the installment of the new 911 system, the former police chief, remember, who quit his job 5 days after Amber's death, and then, of course, like I said, the McKinneys. Now, since the filing of the lawsuit, we haven't heard from Randy Woods, the police chief, but the judge, Robbie Williams, said that the 911 calls would have been handled exactly the same way had the old system been in place. Okay, so what's up with the three men? Well, Dr. McKinney, he's lawyered up, and he's also ponied up the $250,000 needed to get himself out of jail. His license to practice dental work has been suspended, and he is being closely watched by law enforcement. His son is not so lucky. MK and Square are still incarcerated, and there is speculation that Square is potentially working a deal. That's just speculation at this point. And that Facebook group, well, it's filled with back and forth. This community is riled up. I'll keep you updated on whether a plea deal emerges and also how the civil suit turns out. I'm also grateful that Debbie has kept Amber's fight and legacy alive. Amber had challenges that I'm not sure I could have weathered, and she deserved better than to be discarded on a wealthy person's couch after being brutally murdered. I'll let you know more when I know more. And let's let's talk about this case out of Lake Havasu, Arizona, where a 44-year-old cheer coach and child development teacher at a charter school has accepted a plea deal for the charges that she faced concerning a 17-year-old boy. So you're probably thinking, oh, we have another teacher having sex with a student, because you guys, it's becoming that common. But this one is different. This 17-year-old boy ran away from home in February of this year, but he wasn't living on the streets. He was living in Robin Rogers' home, and she's the teacher. See, back on Valentine's Day, the boy, who I'm going to call B, was reported as a runaway. After the police followed several leads and what they call silent witness tips, they came to believe he was staying at Robin's home. In early July, officers visited Robin's home, and as they were chatting, an officer spotted B running out of the back of the house. That officer took chase and eventually captured the young man. Robin hinted during her interview with authorities that her and B had a sexual relationship and that she began harboring him after they celebrated Valentine's night together. And the relationship had more illegal activity involved because officers found drugs and drug paraphernalia at her home. Well, Robin was charged with 3 counts of sexual contact with a minor, as well as a hindering prosecution charge and charges of false reporting to law enforcement. Now, I'm going to guess that the last charge stems from her initially denying B was in her home. She was also charged with possession of narcotics. Robin was employed at the Telesis Preparatory Academy, but just 2 days after her arrest, she was no longer listed on the school staff portion of the website. An older version of the website listed Robin as the cheer coach, a teacher in the child development and life skills arena, and a school athletic liaison. As Robin was jailed, prosecutors surmised that she had groomed the boy since his freshman year at the school. But in a shocking twist on Monday, prosecutors announced that Robin has received a plea deal that includes 0 jail time. The deal, which will be approved or denied by a judge in September, recommends that Robin be placed on supervised probation. Now, for some, that's just a slap on the wrist for Robin's predatory behavior. And that behavior has become more widely pronounced over the last few years. In 2023 alone, there were over 350 different teachers who were charged with some form of sexual abuse between teacher and student. In 2024, the number of charges is trending even higher than 2023. So what do you think? Is supervised probation enough? Or is 17 years old just old enough to decide whom that person would like to shack up with? Let me know in the comments. And now another story that has seen a lot of internet traffic over the last couple of days. This one concerns 28-year-old California surfer Liam Mahoney. Except Liam was catching some waves in Belmar, New Jersey last week. And here's the deal. In Belmar, surfers are required to purchase a badge for their beach day. And that badge works almost like a ticket into a movie theater or a theme park. If you pay, you can play. Well, the badge is supposed to be displayed on your beach attire like your wetsuit, or at least that's what attendants say. Liam did not have his badge on his wetsuit, and he was approached by the authorities. Here, give the video a listen on podcast or a watch if you're on YouTube with me.
Why are you arresting him? It's right here. Yeah, you guys tear this off. This guy's a Stop! 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 Don't Hey! Stop! What are you doing? What is this? Stop!
They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, you guys are
Yeah.
He has a fucking badge!
Dude, please. You have a badge.
Why would you do this? Because he doesn't have a badge. He's right here, dumbass!
No, I have a badge. I'm
What
not
the
skate, bro.
Why are you doing this? Why are
Hey,
you doing
stop.
this? Staring at me, child, you stupid idiot!
Yeah, all in video.
Hey,
Now, for those on podcast only, the video has two things. Lots of upset bystanders who think the police are overreacting, and also some brutal force by the one officer in particular when he tackles Liam to the ground, even after Liam is saying he has a badge. Now, Liam is placed in a chokehold, which I'm sure the officer was trained to handle a violent offender that way. But beachgoers were frustrated because Liam wasn't really being violent. And they also were very focused on the fact that Liam did have a beach badge. Well, following the incident, Liam was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice. But Belmar Chief of Police Tina Scott says, hey, not so fast when it comes to the judgment of her officer. She says the video that was shared on social media doesn't explain the whole truth. According to her, the police had received multiple complaints about surfers illegally entering the beach. She also said gate attendants had asked this specific group of surfers to show their badges, but they refused, or at least they didn't comply with the request. Maybe they just kind of ignored the attendant and kept doing what they were doing. Now, when officers showed up and specifically asked Liam to show his badge, Chief Scott says Liam responded with, I don't need one. That's when one of the officers said he informed Liam that state and local laws do in fact require him to have a badge. The officer said when he asked Liam to show a state-issued ID, that Liam walked away from him. The officer then said he told Liam he was not free to leave, and if he continued to walk away, he would place him under arrest. He also said that he asked Liam to drop his surfboard multiple times, and that Liam refused to comply. And now we're caught up to the video, where the officer tackles Liam and the crowd of beachgoers becomes incensed. Chief Scott assured the Daily Voice out of New Jersey that her officer asked Liam to stop 10 times. She also said she wanted to be clear that Liam was not arrested for not having a beach badge. Instead, he was arrested for obstructing an officer's investigation by refusing to hand over his ID. Now, the Daily Mail did their due diligence and searched the Belmar Beach Beautiful Sea Beach website. On that site, it does state that badges are required to enter the beach 7 days a week, beginning Memorial Day weekend until Labor Day. But the website does not state if a beachgoer must always wear the badge while on the beach. If a person is issued a summons for not having a badge, they will not be allowed back on the beach until they purchase one, and they could also be fined up to $500. So I'm giving you another assignment. Let me know what you think. Did the officer go too far? I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. And let's end with this story. The AP is reporting that AI is being used by police departments across the nation to help complete their paperwork. Okay, did you guys just raise an eyebrow? Because I would have totally raised an eyebrow if this Botox I have was a little more worn off. Okay, here's how it works. The new AI product offered by the tech company Axon is called Draft One, and it's designed to help police officers file reports in less time than is usually required. So basically, officers spend about a third of their day filing paperwork. I remember interviewing an officer once, and he likened his job to an hour on the clock. 5 minutes of the hour is spicy and intense and full of intrigue. And then he said 59 minutes of the job is mundane and filled with paperwork. So this new technology takes the police body cam footage and then interprets that body cam footage, decides what's going on, and then generates the report for the officer. It can also instantly provide that report to supervisors so that all parties are quickly on the same page. But will this kind of technology stand up in court? What if an officer has to testify and he didn't write the report? AI did. And then there's also the evidence found with another AI tool that has police department watchdogs concerned. This technology, called ShotSpotter, examines the body cam footage just like the other one, but instead, the technology is searching for the sound of gunshots. The company claims that the AI tool can detect up to 14 million different sounds, but that technology has presented some serious flaws. For instance, in one case, when spot shotter was used to present evidence in court, An Illinois grandfather erroneously spent a year in jail after he was accused of shooting a man. The AI technology allegedly picked up a loud noise when the grandfather's car drove through an intersection and determined that the grandfather had fired a shot at the passenger in another car. All of this according to the AP. Well, all along, the grandfather claimed it was another car near his that contained the shooter. When a judge couldn't find distinct evidence showing who the shooter was, the case was dismissed. But the grandfather had already spent a year in jail before all the legal maneuvering had happened. And it's not just AI that is being used with body cam footage. Lawyers are now asking AI to provide case law to back up their current working case. Unfortunately, AI has been shown to create fake court cases or citations, and those fake cases are being cited as real in legal documents. And then there's the old-fashioned scouring of documents and evidence. See, prosecutors and defense attorneys are using AI to search and sift through documents, and they're relying on the results that are spit out by the AI tool. Okay, that's not working out so well either. A 2024 Stanford University study has found that 75% of the answers or revelations in AI-generated searches regarding court rulings are just simply incorrect or made up. If I had a loved one who was maybe murdered, I certainly wouldn't want the prosecutor using only AI to try the case or to build the case. This is just one more instance where technology can be so beneficial, but also so harmful at the same time. Well, that's your Thursday episode of Rise in Crime. I hope you enjoyed this one. Like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of the cases. I love having you along for this ride. If you love the show, please share it with a friend. And we always appreciate 5-star reviews and positive comments. Please like and follow us on all of our social media and YouTube. And you can join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.